The carriage wheels clattered against the cobblestone path, each jolt sending tremors through Eleonora's trembling hands. Her breath formed small clouds in the chilled air of the vehicle's interior, though her shivers came not from the cold, but from dread that had settled deep within her bones. Outside, beyond the velvet curtains she dared not part, rain pattered against the carriage roof like a funeral drum. 17 years of life had taught her little of the world beyond her father's modest estate, but she understood well enough what it meant to be sold. The transaction had been discussed in hushed tones behind closed doors, but the walls of Blackmere Manor had never kept secrets well. Her father's gambling debts, the Duke of Thornwick's proposition, the contract signed in the dead of night, sealed with wax the colour of blood. "You'll want for nothing," her father had said that morning, refusing to meet her gaze as servants packed her few possessions. "The Duke is generous. His age brings wisdom. You should be grateful, grateful." The word burned in her mind like acid. The Duke was over 70, his back hunched with age, his fingers twisted with gout. Thrice widowed, each wife younger than the last, each perishing under circumstances that village gossip dared only whisper about. And now she was to be the fourth, delivered to his estate as the sun set on this dreary autumn day, payment for her father's sins. The carriage slowed, and Eleonora's heart quickened. They had entered the grounds of Thornwick Estate, a sprawling Gothic monstrosity that loomed against the darkening sky. Gargoyles peered down from rain-slick rooftops, their stone eyes seeming to track the carriage's progress up the winding drive. "We've arrived, milady," the driver called, his voice muffled by the rain. Eleonora smoothed her hands over the emerald silk of her dress, the finest she'd ever worn, a gift from her betrothed to make her presentable. Her dark hair had been arranged in elaborate curls, her pale skin powdered to hide the evidence of her tears. She was being delivered like a wrapped gift, adorned for the pleasure of the man who had purchased her. The carriage door swung open, and a servant extended a black umbrella. With legs threatening to buckle beneath her, Eleonora stepped down, her eyes fixed on the grand entrance of Thornwick Estate. The massive oak doors stood open, golden light spilling onto the wet stone steps. In the doorway, a shadow waited, tall, thin, leaning heavily upon an ebony cane. "My dear," called a voice like parchment scraping stone. "Welcome to your new home." The Duke of Thornwick extended a liver-spotted hand as she ascended the steps. Up close, he was even more terrifying than she remembered from their brief introduction. His skin hung loose on his skull, his eyes sunken but gleaming with an intensity that made her flesh crawl. When he smiled, his teeth appeared too large for his shrunken gums. "You're even lovelier than when I first saw you," he whispered, his breath smelling of decay and expensive brandy. "How fortunate I am to have secured such a prize." His fingers closed around hers with surprising strength. Behind him, a dozen servants stood in perfect formation, their expressions carefully blank as they beheld their master's newest acquisition. "Show Lady Eleonora to her chambers," the Duke instructed an austere woman in black. "She will need rest before the ceremony tomorrow." Tomorrow. The word struck Eleonora like physical blow. She had foolishly hoped for time to plan, to plead, to escape, but the Duke had no intention of waiting. "Tomorrow?" she echoed, her voice barely audible. The Duke's smile widened. "I've waited long enough, my dear. The priest has been summoned. By this time tomorrow, you shall be the Duchess of Thornwick." His cold fingers traced the line of her jaw. "And all that entails." The housekeeper, Mrs. Graves, as she tersely introduced herself, led Eleonora through the labyrinth of Thornwick's halls. Portraits of stern-faced ancestors watched their progress, their eyes seeming to follow her path. The air inside was nearly as cold as outside, despite roaring fires in every hearth they passed. "These will be your quarters," Mrs. Graves announced, opening a heavy door to reveal an opulent suite draped in crimson and gold. The Duke had them specially prepared. The centerpiece of the room was an enormous canopied bed, its dark wooden posts carved with intertwining roses and thorns. Fresh flowers adorned every surface, their sweetness failing to mask an underlying mustiness. "The previous Duchess occupied these rooms?" Eleanora asked, running her fingers along the silk bedspread. Mrs. Graves stiffened. "All of them did, miss." "And what happened to them?" "Truly." The housekeeper's eyes darted to the door, as though fearing eavesdroppers. "It's not my place to speak of such things." "Please," Eleanora whispered. "I have no one else to ask." Something like pity flickered across the woman's severe features. "They faded, miss, like flowers without light. The Duke, he has peculiar requirements of his wives, requirements that drain the life from young women." A chill that had nothing to do with the room's temperature crept up Eleanora's spine. "What requirements?" Mrs. Graves shook her head. "You'll learn soon enough. A bath will be drawn for you shortly. The Duke expects you to join him for dinner in an hour." She paused at the door. "If I may offer one piece of advice, miss, do not drink the wine he offers. Claim a headache from the journey." Before Eleanora could question her further, the woman was gone, leaving her alone in the chamber of dead duchesses. She moved to the window, pushing aside heavy curtains to reveal iron bars on the outside, decorative perhaps, but no less effective at preventing escape. Beyond the bars and glass, the estate grounds stretched into darkness, bordered by dense forest. Rain continued to fall, turning the manicured gardens into a glistening labyrinth. As lightning briefly illuminated the scene, Eleanora caught sight of something, or someone, standing at the forest's edge, a tall figure seemingly untouched by the downpour. She blinked, and it was gone. Dinner was a torturous affair. The Duke sat at the head of a table long enough to seat 30, with Eleanora placed at his right hand, close enough to smell the cologne that failed to mask his decay. Course after course was served, each more elaborate than the last, but fear closed her throat around every bite. "You've hardly touched your wine," he observed, his own glass already refilled twice. "Is it not to your liking?" Eleanora remembered Mrs. Graves's warning. "Forgive me, my lord, I fear the journey has left me with a terrible headache." "A pity," he murmured, eyes narrowing slightly. "My private cellars produce a very special vintage. It has restorative properties." The way he emphasized the word made her skin crawl. Throughout the meal, he spoke of their future together, the social events they would host, the respect she would command as his duchess, the heirs she would provide him. Each word was another stone in the wall of her prison. "I understand this arrangement was unexpected," he said as dessert was served. "But I assure you, Eleanora, you will want for nothing as my wife." Her father had used those same words, wanting for nothing except freedom. "My lord is generous," she replied mechanically. "Indeed." His twisted fingers reached across the table to grasp hers. "And I require only simple things in return. Your beauty, your youth." Something hungry flashed in his eyes. "Your blood." The fork she had been holding clattered against fine china. "My blood?" The Duke chuckled, a sound like stones grinding together. "A figure of speech, my dear. Though marriage does require certain sacrifices, does it not?" Later, back in her chambers, Eleanora paced like a caged animal. Her mind raced through possibilities, each bleaker than the last. The windows were barred, the doors would surely be guarded, and beyond lay miles of wilderness she had no hope of navigating alone. As midnight approached, exhaustion finally overcame fear. She changed into the nightgown that had been laid out, white silk trimmed with lace, more suited for a bridal night than sleep, and slipped between cold sheets. Despite her racing thoughts, the weight of the day pulled her toward unconsciousness. A sound at the window jolted her awake. Rain still lashed against the glass, but beneath it came another noise, a deliberate tapping. Eleanora froze, listening. 3 taps, then silence, then 3 more. Heart pounding, she slid from bed and approached the window. Through the rain-streaked glass, she could make out a figure hovering impossibly beyond the bars, 3 floors above the ground. Lightning flashed, illuminating a man's face, angular, beautiful, and utterly inhuman. Eyes red as rubies met hers through the glass. Fear should have sent her screaming from the window, but something in those eyes held her transfixed. The figure gestured toward the latch. Against all reason, Eleonora reached out and unlocked it. The window swung inward, rain and wind gusting into the room. The bars remained, but the man, if he was a man, seemed to move through them like smoke, materializing fully inside her chamber. He was tall, dressed in black clothing that clung to his form like a second skin. Raven hair framed a face of such perfect symmetry it seemed carved rather than born. But it was his eyes that held her, human in shape but the color of fresh blood, with pupils like a cat's. "Eleonora Blackmere," he said, his voice a resonant baritone that seemed to vibrate through her bones. "I've come to make you an offer." She should have screamed, should have run. Instead, she found herself asking, "Who are you?" "I am Valerian." He moved deeper into the room with predatory grace. "And what I am, I think you already suspect." Stories from her childhood flooded back, creatures of the night, drinkers of blood, immortal and soulless. "Vampire," she whispered. He inclined his head, neither confirming nor denying. "The Duke of Thornwick and I have history. He takes what doesn't belong to him, things I want. And now you want me?" Eleonora's voice trembled between fear and strange hope. Valerian's lips curved into a smile that revealed the edges of fangs. "I want your freedom, Eleonora, and I've paid handsomely for it." "Paid? To whom?" "Your father." A bitter laugh escaped her. "My father already sold me once. What makes you think he won't sell me again to the highest bidder?" "Because I didn't pay with gold," Valerian said, moving closer until she could feel the supernatural cold that emanated from his body. "I paid with blood, ancient blood, filled with power he can only dream of. 1 drop in his wine each night will extend his miserable life by decades. He values his own survival above all else, even the Duke's patronage." Eleonora's mind reeled. "You've purchased me?" "No." Valerian's eyes gleamed in the darkness. "I've purchased your freedom. What you do with it is your choice." "What choice? I have nowhere to go, no means to survive. I offer sanctuary, protection from the Duke, whose appetites are far more monstrous than mine." His cold fingers brushed her cheek. "Come with me, and you will never be owned again." "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you do this for a stranger?" Something ancient and pained flickered in those inhuman eyes. "Because once, long ago, someone I loved was in your position, with no one to save her. The Duke has taken enough young brides to his bed of horrors. I will not allow you to be the next." Outside, a cry went up, the sound of alarm spreading through the estate. "They've discovered your father's deception," Valerian said urgently. "The Duke's men will be here momentarily. You must decide now, Eleonora. Stay and become the 4th Duchess to perish within these walls, or come with me into the night." "And if I go with you, what will I become?" she asked, thinking of his fangs, his inhuman eyes. "Whatever you choose," he answered, "but you will be free to make that choice." Footsteps pounded in the hallway outside her door. The handle rattled violently. Eleonora looked into the vampire's eyes and saw something the Duke had never offered. Choice. True choice. Behind her, the door splintered as shoulders were thrown against it. "Yes," she said, reaching for his outstretched hand. "Take me away from here." His cold fingers closed around hers, and the world dissolved into shadow as the door burst open behind them. The last thing Eleonora saw was the Duke of Thornwick's face contorted with rage as she and Valerian melted through the bars of her window and into the storm-lashed night. She had escaped one monster's cage, but as the vampire's arms tightened around her and they soared above the treetops, Eleonora couldn't help wondering what darker bargain she had just struck. and what price her newfound freedom would ultimately demand. The wind whipped around them as they soared above the countryside, Eleonora's nightgown billowing like ghostly wings. She clung to Valerian, her fingers digging into the cold hardness of his shoulders. Below, Thornwick Estate receded into darkness, its windows ablaze with light as the household erupted into chaos. The Duke's furious roar seemed to chase them through the storm-laden air. "Where are we going?" Eleonora shouted over the howling wind, her hair lashing her face. Valerian didn't answer. His focus remained fixed on the horizon, where lightning illuminated the silhouette of ancient ruins crowning a distant hill. They moved with impossible speed, the landscape blurring beneath them. What should have been a journey of hours passed in mere minutes. They descended toward what appeared to be the remnants of a medieval abbey, its broken spires reaching toward the churning heavens like skeletal fingers. As they neared the ground, Eleonora's stomach lurched with the sudden drop. Valerian's landing was graceful despite their speed, his feet touching stone without sound. He released her, and Eleonora stumbled, her legs weak from flight and fear. Rain soaked her nightgown, plastering it to her skin. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly aware of her near-nakedness before this creature who was neither man nor beast. "This way," Valerian said, moving toward an archway half hidden by climbing vines. "We must get you warm." Eleonora hesitated. The full weight of her decision crashed upon her. She had fled with a vampire, a monster from childhood nightmares, to a desolate ruin miles from civilization. "I won't harm you," he said, seeming to sense her thoughts. "Had that been my intention, I needn't have bothered with all this theater." His logic was sound, if cold. Eleonora followed him through the archway and down a narrow staircase that descended beneath the ruined abbey. The steps gave way to a corridor lit by torches in iron sconces. Impossible, for they had burned without attention. The dancing flames revealed walls of polished stone, adorned with tapestries depicting hunts, battles, and scenes from myths she didn't recognize. "This is your sanctuary?" she asked, gazing at the underground palace that defied explanation. "One of them," Valerian gestured toward a doorway. "There are clothes inside that should fit you. Once you're decent, we'll talk." The chamber beyond was small but luxurious. A bedroom with a canopied bed, a copper tub, and a wardrobe of dark wood. A fire burned in a small hearth, filling the space with warmth that made Eleonora realize how thoroughly chilled she had become. The wardrobe contained gowns of various styles and eras, some so ancient they might have belonged in a museum. She selected the simplest she could find, a dress of deep blue with silver embroidery at the hem and sleeves. It fit as though made for her. When she emerged, Valerian waited in an adjacent chamber, a study lined with books from floor to ceiling. He had changed as well, his rain-soaked attire replaced by a white shirt and black breeches that emphasized his otherworldly beauty. In the warm glow of candlelight, his red eyes seemed less monstrous, his pale skin less deathly. "Better?" he asked, gesturing toward a chair near the fire. Eleonora sat, keeping her back straight, hands folded in her lap. "You promised explanations." "So I did." Valerian remained standing, moving to a sideboard where he poured amber liquid into 2 crystal glasses. He offered one to her. She eyed it suspiciously. "Is this how you enthrall your victims? With drugged spirits?" A smile flickered across his face, amused, not predatory. "Merely brandy. Exceptional brandy, aged since before your great-grandparents drew breath, but nothing more sinister. I have no need for such crude methods of persuasion." Eleonora accepted the glass but didn't drink. "What exactly is your quarrel with the Duke? You said you have history. We have centuries of history." Valerian's expression darkened. "Thornwick is older than he appears. Far older. Like me, he has found ways to extend his lifespan beyond mortal limits. Unlike me, his methods require sacrifice." "The wives," Eleonora whispered, remembering Mrs. Graves' warning. "Yes, the Duke practices a form of blood magic, ancient, forbidden, and grotesque. He doesn't merely drink blood as vampires do. He bathes in it, consumes it in rituals, uses it to create elixirs that maintain his failing body. Valerian's voice turned hard as stone. A young bride provides him with both the physical vessel for these rituals and the legal right to dispose of her without questions once he has used her up. Horror crawled up Eleonora's spine. And you've allowed this? For how long? Anger flashed in Valerian's eyes. I have tried to stop him for decades. Thornwick is clever. He chooses his victims carefully, secures them legally through marriage, and keeps them isolated. By the time I discover his latest acquisition, it's often too late. His fingers tightened around his glass until Eleonora feared it might shatter. I failed Louisa and Catherine and Elizabeth. I would not fail you. Those were the previous duchesses, the most recent ones. There have been others, stretching back through centuries. Valerian took a long drink. We were friends once, Thornwick and I, in an age when your ancestors were still painting themselves blue and worshipping oak trees. We discovered the secrets of immortality together, pursued forbidden knowledge side by side. But our paths diverged. I found my way through a transformation that required only one sacrifice, my humanity. Thornwick chose a method requiring endless sacrifice, the humanity of others. Eleonora finally took a sip of her brandy, welcoming the burn in her throat. And my father? What will happen to him? The blood I gave him will extend his life as promised, though not as dramatically as he believes. He'll have perhaps 20 additional years, barring accidents or disease. The Duke, however, will not be pleased with his betrayal. Will he hurt my father? Valerian studied her with an unreadable expression. You care, even after he sold you? Eleonora stared into the amber depths of her glass. He's still my father. Your capacity for forgiveness is remarkable. Valerian moved to a window cut into the stone wall, a window that should have opened underground but somehow revealed the storm-tossed night sky. Thornwick won't kill your father immediately. He'll want information first. Where you've gone, who helped you. Then he'll likely use him as bait to draw you out. Then I've endangered him by escaping. He endangered himself by selling his daughter twice. Valerian's voice held no sympathy. But if it eases your conscience, I've taken precautions. There's a vial of blood hidden among your father's possessions. Vampire blood. If Thornwick's torture becomes too severe, its scent will call to me, and I can intervene. Eleonora's mind reeled with questions. Why go to such lengths for me? The truth this time, not some story about a long-dead lover. Valerian turned from the window, his expression grave. That story was true, though not complete. The woman I spoke of, she was more than someone I loved. She was my sister, Thornwick's first bride. I was still human then, ignorant of the supernatural world. By the time I discovered what he was doing to her, she was beyond saving. Pain etched itself across his perfect features. Her death set me on this path, to vampirism, to immortality, to centuries of hunting Thornwick from the shadows. Yet you haven't killed him. I've tried. Many times. Valerian's laugh held no humor. We are evenly matched. The blood magic that sustains him grants certain protections. And he has powerful allies, beings like myself who share his moral flexibility. So I'm part of your revenge? Eleonora set down her glass. Another move in your centuries-old game? You're an innocent I could save. Nothing more, but there was something in his eyes, a flicker of emotion quickly masked, that suggested otherwise. Before she could question him further, a bell rang somewhere deep within the underground complex. Valerian stiffened. We have company. The Duke? Eleonora rose, heart pounding. No, someone else. He gestured for her to stay seated. Wait here. He was gone before she could protest, moving with that uncanny speed that defied human limitation. Alone in the study, Eleonora paced the perimeter, examining the books that lined the walls. Many were in languages she couldn't identify, their spines decorated with symbols rather than letters. Others were in English, but so ancient their leather bindings crumbled at the edges. One volume caught her eye, newer than its neighbors, bound in red leather with gold embossing. The title read simply, Thornwick. Her fingers trembled as she pulled it from the shelf. The book contained handwritten accounts, dates and sketches, a chronicle of the Duke's activities spanning decades. Names of his wives were listed alongside dates of marriage and death, the intervals between them growing shorter with each victim. Gruesome details of rituals were described in Valerian's elegant script, alongside methods he had attempted to thwart them. The most recent entry, dated just 3 weeks prior, contained her own name, Eleanora Blackmere, betrothed to Thornwick, extraction planned for October 31st. The date sent a chill through her. Tonight was October 31st, All Hallows' Eve. Valerian hadn't rescued her on a whim. He had been planning this for weeks. A notation at the bottom of the page made her blood run cold. Blood compatibility tested, perfect match, the final piece. She was still staring at these words when voices approached, Valerian's familiar baritone alongside a woman's throaty contralto. Hastily, Eleanora returned the book to its shelf, just as the door opened. Valerian entered with a woman who could only be described as magnificent. Tall and willowy, with skin the color of polished mahogany and a cloud of silver-white hair, she moved with the same predatory grace as Valerian. Her eyes, however, were not red, but a luminous amber, slit-pupilled like a cat's. "Eleanora Blackmere," Valerian said, "may I present Lysandra?" The woman inclined her head, studying Eleanora with those unnerving eyes. "So this is the one you've chosen? She's exactly as you described." Eleanora bristled at being discussed as though absent. "Chosen for what exactly?" Lysandra's perfect eyebrows rose. "He hasn't told you?" "Lysandra," Valerian warned. "The poor girl has been traded like cattle twice in one day," Lysandra said, ignoring him. Perhaps honesty would be a refreshing change. Tension crackled between the two immortals. Eleanora looked from one to the other, dread mounting in her chest. "What haven't you told me?" she demanded. Valerian's jaw tightened. "There are complexities I intended to explain once you were settled." "Explain now." Eleanora surprised herself with her boldness. "Your blood," Lysandra said before Valerian could answer, "is unique, special, not just to Thornwick, but to all of our kind." "Lysandra, enough," Valerian snapped. "This isn't how I wanted to approach this." "And how did you plan to approach it?" After she was too entangled to refuse, Lysandra turned to Eleanora. "Every few centuries, a human is born with blood that contains, let's call it a catalyst, something that, when consumed by beings like us, dramatically enhances our powers. Thornwick identified you as such a catalyst months ago. That's why he arranged the marriage with your father." Eleanora felt the room tilt beneath her. "And Valerian has been searching for you even longer," Lysandra finished. "We all have. You're quite the prize, Eleanora Blackmere." "I said enough." Valerian's voice reverberated with power that made the candle flames flicker. To Eleanora, he said more gently, "It's not as she makes it sound." "Then how is it?" Eleanora backed away from both of them. "Was anything you told me true?" "All of it," he insisted. "Thornwick's brutality, your father's bargain, my sister's fate, all true. But yes, I knew what you were before tonight. I've been tracking bloodlines with the Catalyst for centuries, ever since I learned what happened to the last Catalyst bearer who fell into Thornwick's hands." "And what happened to them?" Eleanora whispered, dreading the answer. "He consumed them completely," Valerian said grimly. "Not just their blood, but their essence, their soul. It granted him power beyond imagining for nearly a century. That's why I had to find you first. Not just to use your blood myself, but to keep it from him. To keep me as your personal blood supply, you mean?" The betrayal stung worse than she could have anticipated. In the space of a single day, she had been sold, rescued, and revealed as nothing more than a commodity yet again. "No," Valerian stepped toward her, hands outstretched. "I would never take your blood without consent. That's the difference between Thornwick and myself. Choice, always choice. Yet you didn't give me the choice to know the truth before I fled with you. Would you have believed me if I'd told you?" He countered. "A stranger appearing at your window, claiming your blood held magical properties? You'd have thought me mad." Lysandra made a sound of impatience. "This grows tedious. The girl is here now. What matters is keeping her from Thornwick until we can determine how best to proceed." "I am not the girl," Eleonora said, anger replacing fear. "My name is Eleonora Blackmere, and I am not a vessel for your power struggles. I make my own choices now." A slow smile spread across Lysandra's face. "I like her, Valerian. She has spirit." Valerian looked pained. "Eleonora, please understand. I brought you here to protect you, not to use you. Yes, your blood is valuable to our kind, but I would never—" He broke off as another bell sounded, not the gentle chime from earlier, but an urgent clanging alarm that echoed through the stone corridors. "Perimeter breach!" Lysandra hissed, amber eyes widening. "How did he find us so quickly?" "Her father," Valerian said grimly. "Thornwick must have extracted the information about our arrangement almost immediately. Or you were betrayed by someone closer," Lysandra suggested, eyeing Valerian meaningfully. Eleonora felt sick. "Is it the Duke?" "Yes." Valerian moved to a cabinet and withdrew a slender sword that gleamed with unnatural light. "And he's not alone. I sense at least 5 others with him. Vampires, from the scent." "So much for your sanctuary," Lysandra said, her nails lengthening into curved talons. "What now?" Valerian turned to Eleonora, his expression grave. "We have 3 options. Fight, which is risky with these numbers. Flight, but Thornwick will only track us again. Or, Eleonora prompted. "Or we can complete what I had planned to propose once you were settled. A blood bond, not to drain you, but to link us. Share power rather than transfer it. It would disguise your catalyst nature from Thornwick temporarily and give us the strength to drive him back." "A blood bond?" Eleonora repeated. "What does that entail?" "An exchange," Valerian explained quickly as the sound of fighting erupted somewhere in the distance. "My blood in your veins, yours in mine. A small amount only. It creates a connection that would shield you from detection and grant you certain protections. And limitations," Lysandra added. "Such bonds are not easily broken, girl. You would be tied to him, your life forces entwined. If he were to perish, you would feel it like your own wound. Your emotions would bleed into each other. Your thoughts, in time." The sounds of battle grew louder. Somewhere stone cracked with the force of supernatural bodies colliding. "There's no time for the full explanation you deserve," Valerian said urgently. "I'm sorry for that, but I need your decision, Eleonora. Will you trust me enough for this bond? I swear by whatever you hold sacred that I will protect you, with my life if necessary." She looked into his blood-red eyes and saw something that had been absent in her father's gaze, in the Duke's. Respect. Fear, yes. Urgency, certainly, but also a genuine recognition of her humanity, her autonomy. The door to the study burst inward, revealing a snarling vampire with blood streaking his chin. Lysandra moved with blinding speed, her talons tearing through his throat before he could advance. Behind him, more shadows moved in the corridor. "Eleonora!" Valerian's voice cut through her paralysis. "Your choice. Now!" In that heartbeat of decision, images flashed through her mind. Her father signing away her life, the Duke's withered hand on her skin, the empty eyes of the previous duchesses. Then Valerian, offering his hand at her window, offering escape, offering choice. "Yes," she said, extending her hand to him. "I choose the bond." His relief was palpable. With one fluid movement, he used his sword to make a small cut across his palm, then did the same to hers. Their hands clasped, blood mingling. Vitae conjungo, animus necto, he murmured, the Latin flowing like music, blood to blood, spirit to spirit. Heat flared where their wounds met, not painful but intense, like liquid fire flowing up her arm and spreading through her body. Valerian's eyes blazed brighter, and for an instant, Eleonora could feel his emotions as clearly as her own. Determination, fear, protectiveness, and something deeper, something he kept carefully guarded even from himself. The connection lasted only seconds before he released her hand, but the aftermath lingered. A warmth in her blood, a presence in the back of her mind that hadn't been there before. "It's done," he said, just as the study erupted into chaos. Vampires poured through the doorway, 4 of them, moving with deadly precision. Lysandra engaged 2 at once, her movements a blur of violence. Valerian pushed Eleonora behind him as he faced the others, his sword flashing like lightning in his hand. "Find the passage behind the bookcase," he instructed without looking at her. "Third shelf, green volume with gold lettering. Pull it and run. I'll find you. I won't leave you." The protest died on her lips as she realized the sentiment came not entirely from her own mind, but from the new bond between them. "Go!" Valerian launched himself at the attackers, his sword taking one's head in a clean arc that sent black blood spraying across the books. Eleonora scrambled to the bookcase, scanning frantically for the volume he'd described. She found it, Botanical Remedies of the 16th Century, and pulled. The entire section of shelving swung inward, revealing a dark passage beyond. She cast one last glance at the battle. Valerian fought with inhuman grace, but he was outnumbered. As she watched, one of the vampires landed a blow that sent him crashing into a wall. Through their new bond, she felt an echo of his pain, like a distant bruise on her own body. "Run!" he commanded again, aloud and through the bond. This time she obeyed, plunging into the darkness of the secret passage. The door swung shut behind her, plunging her into blackness. She moved forward blindly, one hand on the rough stone wall. The passage sloped upward, twisting and turning until she lost all sense of direction. After what seemed like hours, but might have been minutes, she emerged into the rain-swept ruins of the abbey above. Lightning illuminated the night in strobic flashes, revealing a figure standing among the broken pillars, tall, stooped, leaning on an ebony cane. "My dear Lady Eleonora," said the Duke of Thornwick, his thin lips stretching into a smile that revealed too many teeth. "How kind of you to join me." Behind him stood a circle of figures in dark cloaks, their eyes gleaming with inhuman hunger in the darkness. And at the Duke's feet, bound and bleeding but still conscious, knelt her father. "Papa!" she cried, taking an involuntary step forward. "I'm sorry," her father sobbed, his face a mask of terror and regret. "He promised he wouldn't hurt you if I helped him find you. I'm so sorry." The Duke's hand came to rest on her father's shoulder, clawed fingers digging into flesh. "Family reunions are so touching, aren't they? But I'm afraid we have more pressing business." His rheumy eyes fixed on Eleonora with terrifying intensity. "I can smell him on you. Valerian's blood. He's begun the bonding process, hasn't he?" How predictable. Through the fledgling bond in her mind, Eleonora felt Valerian's consciousness like a distant star, alive but weakened, fighting to reach her. What had been meant as protection now felt like a beacon, drawing the Duke's attention directly to her. "What do you want from me?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. The Duke's smile widened. "Everything, my dear. Every drop of your miraculous blood. Every beat of your extraordinary heart." He extended his withered hand. "And I will have it one way or another. The only question is how much pain you wish to endure in the process." Thunder crashed overhead as Eleonora faced the monster she had been sold to marry, the rain washing away her tears, but not her determination. Somewhere in the underground chambers, Valerian fought to reach her. Somewhere in the bond between them, power waited to be unleashed. She just had to survive long enough to discover how to use it. The Duke's fingers beckoned to her, skeletal and demanding. Eleonora stood frozen among the rain-slick ruins, her soaked gown clinging to her trembling limbs. Lightning carved the sky into jagged shards, illuminating the circle of vampiric acolytes surrounding them, predators waiting for their master's command. "Come now," the Duke coaxed, his voice deceptively gentle. "You've led us on quite a chase, my dear. Surely you realize there's nowhere left to run." Through the newly formed bond, Eleonora could sense Valerian's desperate struggle below. Flashes of his battle flickered through her mind. Lysandra fighting beside him, both of them wounded but still battling against the Duke's minions. She needed time for Valerian to reach her, time to understand the strange power now flowing through her veins. "If I come with you willingly," she said, forcing strength into her voice, "will you release my father?" The Duke's laugh was like stones grinding together. "How noble! Always concerned for the man who sold you twice over." His clawed hand tightened on her father's shoulder, drawing a whimper of pain. "But I'm afraid Lord Blackmere's usefulness has reached its end." With a movement too swift for Eleonora's human eyes to follow, the Duke plunged his other hand into her father's chest. Blood bloomed like a crimson flower across her father's shirt as he gasped, eyes bulging with shock. "No!" Eleonora screamed, lunging forward, only to be caught by two of the Duke's vampires, their cold hands locking around her arms with bruising force. Her father's body slumped to the ground, rain washing his blood across ancient stones. The Duke raised his gore-covered hand, examining it with clinical interest before licking one finger clean. "Ordinary," he pronounced with disappointment. "How such mundane blood could produce offspring with your potential remains one of nature's mysteries." His gaze returned to Eleonora, hungry and calculating. "But then, your mother's lineage always was the source of interest." "My mother?" Eleonora whispered, momentarily distracted from her horror. "Oh yes, the lovely Isabel." The Duke stepped over her father's body as though it were nothing more than a fallen branch. "Did you never wonder why she died so young? Why your father never spoke of her? Isabel Nightshade was the last of a very special bloodline, one I'd been tracking for generations. I had such plans for her until your father stole her away." His smile turned cruel. "I found her eventually, of course, but by then she'd already given birth to you. Her blood was disappointingly diluted, but yours—" His eyes gleamed with unholy hunger. "Yours has matured into everything I hoped for." Grief and rage boiled within Eleonora. The rain seemed to respond to her emotions, falling harder, lashing at them with wind-driven fury. Through her bond with Valerian, she felt a surge of something unfamiliar, power awakening, responding to her distress. "I am not your possession," she snarled, surprising herself with the ferocity in her voice. "No," agreed the Duke, stopping just before her. "You are my salvation." From within his cloak he withdrew a curved ceremonial dagger, its blade inscribed with symbols that seemed to writhe in the lightning's glow. "The bonding Valerian began complicates matters, but no matter. With the right ritual I can sever his claim and bind you to me instead. Under tonight's Samhain moon, with the veil between worlds at its thinnest, your catalyst blood will fuel my final transformation." As he raised the dagger, the ground beneath them trembled. A crack split the stone courtyard, running from the secret passage entrance toward the center of the ruins. The vampires holding Eleonora loosened their grip momentarily, startled by the disturbance. It was enough. With strength she didn't know she possessed, Eleonora tore free, stumbling backward toward the Abbey's shattered altar. The bond in her mind flared brighter, and she understood. Valerian was channeling power to her through their connection. "Take her!" the Duke commanded, fury distorting his aristocratic features into something truly monstrous. The vampires surged forward, but as they did, the crack in the earth widened. Stone exploded upward as Valerian erupted from below, his sword gleaming with unnatural light, his eyes blazing crimson. Behind him came Lysandra, her silver hair matted with black blood, her talons extended. "You're too late, old friend," the Duke called over the storm's howl. "The girl's father is dead, and soon she'll be bound to me." Valerian's gaze found Eleonora across the chaos, their bond humming with shared purpose. "The bond is stronger than you realize, Thornwick," he replied, his voice carrying despite the tempest. "She's already beyond your reach." The Duke's face contorted with rage. "Kill them," he ordered his acolytes. "Bring the girl to me alive, but bring me their hearts." The vampiric horde descended upon Valerian and Lysandra like a wave of shadow. Steel flashed against talon and fang as the immortals clashed among the ruins. Eleonora pressed back against the altar stone, her mind racing. Through the bond, she could feel Valerian's strength and his fear for her. But there was something else too, a current of knowledge flowing between them. "The catalyst awakens with blood and sacrifice," came his thought, more impression than words. "Your mother's lineage, your father's death. The conditions align." She didn't understand, but instinct guided her hand to the small wound on her palm where Valerian had cut her for their bond. It was still raw, still seeping blood. The Duke had turned his attention to the battle, advancing on Valerian with surprising agility. For one so apparently frail, the ceremonial dagger raised. Eleonora pressed her bleeding palm against the ancient altar stone. "Blood to blood," she whispered, echoing Valerian's earlier words, "spirit to spirit." The stone beneath her hand grew warm, then hot. Lines of light spread outward from her palm, tracing long-forgotten patterns carved into the altar's surface. The storm above intensified, lightning striking so close that thunder and flash became one deafening explosion. All combat in the courtyard stuttered to a halt as the light from the altar grew blindingly bright. The Duke turned back toward her, his face twisting with a mixture of rage and awe. "No," he breathed, "it can't be. Not here." Eleonora didn't understand what was happening, but power surged through her, flowing from the bond with Valerian, from the altar, from the storm itself. Her body felt incandescent with it, as if she might burn away at any moment. "What is this place?" she demanded, her voice carrying strange resonance. "What aren't you telling me?" The Duke's expression shifted to calculation. "So you don't know? How delicious." He gestured around them at the ruined abbey. "This was never a Christian place of worship, girl. The stones beneath these ruins are far older, a temple to powers your kind has forgotten. Powers that recognize your blood." "She needs to know everything, Thornwick," Valerian called, fighting his way toward them. "Tell her what you did to her mother." A snarl twisted the Duke's features. "Always the righteous one, Valerian. Always the protector." He glanced back at Eleonora, who remained rooted by the glowing altar. "Very well. Your mother was not just any catalyst. She was the culmination of a bloodline I had cultivated for centuries. Isabel should have been my greatest triumph, my final sacrifice. But then your father appeared, with his pretty face and romantic notions. He stole her away before the ritual was complete." "What ritual?" Eleonora's fingers dug into the stone beneath her hand. "Apotheosis," the Duke replied, his voice reverent. "True immortality, not the half-life of vampirism that Valerian chose, but godhood. When I finally tracked Isabel down, she was already pregnant with you. The ritual required a virgin catalyst, so I was forced to wait, to plan. I let her live long enough to birth you, hoping her power had passed to her child." Horror washed through Eleonora as understanding dawned. "You killed my mother." "I completed what should have been her destiny," the Duke corrected. "Her sacrifice was not in vain. Her blood sustained me for years, though it wasn't strong enough for the final transformation." His gaze raked over Eleonora with naked hunger. "But yours will be." Through the bond, Valerian's voice reached her. "Don't listen. He twists truth with lies. Your mother died protecting you. From the moment of your birth I've waited," the Duke continued, taking another step toward her. arranging for your father's gambling debts, creating circumstances that would deliver you to me willingly, legally, everything precisely timed for tonight, Samhain, when the barriers between worlds thin and power flows most freely. And yet here we stand in Valyrian's sanctuary, not yours, Eleonora observed, finding courage in the power still flowing through her. My father sold me to you, then to him. What does that tell you about your grand design? Fury flashed across the Duke's face. Temporary setbacks. Valyrian has always interfered with my plans. 5 centuries of meddling, all because he couldn't save one worthless girl. My sister was not worthless, Valyrian snarled, cutting down another vampire as he fought to reach Eleonora's side. Lysandra moved with him, their fighting styles complementing each other with the familiarity of old allies. Your sister was the first, the Duke replied. The prototype, if you will. Her blood showed the first signs of catalyst potential, thanks to my careful breeding of your family line. Did you never wonder why I chose her as my bride? It wasn't for her pretty face. Shock reverberated through the bond from Valyrian to Eleonora. This was news to him, the revelation that his own bloodline had been part of the Duke's centuries-long experiment. You're lying, Valyrian growled, but uncertainty colored his words. Am I? Search your memories, old friend. Your parents' mysterious deaths. Your sister's arranged marriage to a man 3 times her age. The strange illnesses that plagued your family for generations. The Duke's smile was triumphant. All my doing, all to produce the perfect catalyst. The light from the altar pulsed in time with Eleonora's racing heart. The storm above had become a vortex, clouds spiraling directly over the ruined abbey. She could feel something ancient stirring beneath the stones, responding to her blood, to the power flowing through the bond. If what you say is true, she said, her voice steadier than she felt, then you've manipulated generations of innocent people, murdered countless women, all for your own selfish pursuit of power. Not selfish, the Duke corrected. Visionary. The gods who once walked this earth were born of blood sacrifice and catalyst vessels. I merely rediscovered the method. He extended his withered hand toward her. Join me willingly, and I will make your transformation painless. Resist, and I will take what I need by force. Through their bond, Valyrian's desperate plea reached her. Don't listen, there's another way. The altar, it's responding to you, not him. Your mother knew this place. She brought me here after escaping him. A memory not her own flowed through the bond, a younger Valyrian following a dark-haired woman through moonlight to this very ruin. Isabel Nightshade, her mother, barely 20 years old, but with eyes ancient with knowledge. My mother knew you? Eleonora gasped aloud. She sought my protection, Valyrian confirmed, finally breaking through the circle of vampires to reach the altar. Lysandra followed, forming a protective barrier between them and the Duke. Isabel knew what Thornwick intended for her child, for you. She made me swear to find you when the time came, to bring you here, to this altar, on Samhain night. The Duke's face contorted with rage. Always interfering, Valyrian. Always the noble protector. He raised his dagger. But you're too late. The girl's blood will be mine, one way or another. He lunged forward with inhuman speed, aiming not for Valyrian, but for Eleonora. The ceremonial dagger flashed in the lightning's glow, seeking her heart. Time seemed to slow. Eleonora saw Valyrian moving to intercept, saw he wouldn't reach her in time. The bond between them blazed with desperate fear, his for her, hers for him. Without conscious thought, she pressed her bleeding palm harder against the altar stone and spoke a single word that rose unbidden from somewhere deep within her bloodline's memory. Protego. Light erupted from the altar, engulfing Eleonora in a cocoon of blinding radiance. The Duke's dagger struck this barrier and shattered like glass, fragments raining across the stone courtyard. The force of the impact sent him staggering backward, his face a mask of shock and fury. Impossible, he hissed. The altar responds only to those of the old blood, the priestess bloodline. Understanding dawned on Valyrian's face. Isabel wasn't just a catalyst, he breathed. She was a descendant of the temple priestesses. The Duke's expression shifted from rage to calculation. So that's why her blood alone wasn't enough. The power was divided, catalyst and vessel in one bloodline. His eyes locked on Eleonora with renewed hunger. All the more reason why I must have you, girl. With both bloodlines combined in one vessel, the transformation will be complete. The light surrounding Eleonora began to pulse, growing stronger with each beat of her heart. Through the bond, Valerian's knowledge flowed to her. Fractured pieces of lore he'd gathered over centuries, combined with what Isabel had shared with him. The altar doesn't grant godhood, Thornwick, Valerian said, stepping closer to Eleonora. It channels power from beyond the veil, power that requires balance. A catalyst alone can't control it. A priestess bloodline alone can't summon it. Both are needed, working in harmony. Then I shall take both, the Duke snarled, signaling to his remaining vampires. They attacked en masse, forcing Lysandra away from the altar as they surrounded Valerian. Through their bond, Eleonora felt Valerian's determination and his realization. The bond between us. His thoughts came to her, catalyst and vampire. Your blood awakens the power, mine can channel it. Together, she understood without further explanation. The altar had responded to her blood, but it needed more. It needed the bond between them, the balance of human catalyst and immortal vessel. Blood to blood, she called to Valerian across the chaos of battle. Spirit to spirit, he fought with renewed purpose, cutting a path toward her. The Duke, realizing their intent, abandoned his attack on the light barrier and launched himself at Valerian's back, taloned hands extended. "Valerian, behind you!" Eleonora screamed. He turned, but too late. The Duke's claws tore across his back, sending him crashing to his knees. Black blood spilled across ancient stones as the Duke stood over him triumphantly. 5 centuries of interference ends tonight, the Duke hissed, raising his hand for the killing blow. Desperate, Eleonora pressed both hands against the altar. The bond between her and Valerian pulsed like a living thing, stretched thin by distance, but unbreakable. She could feel his pain, his life force ebbing as the Duke prepared to end him. "No!" she whispered, then shouted, "No!" The altar beneath her hands cracked. Light poured from the fissure, shooting upward into the storm-tossed sky. The vortex above responded, lightning striking the ruined abbey in a continuous stream that connected heaven and earth through Eleonora. Power unlike anything she had ever imagined coursed through her. Through the bond, it flowed to Valerian, knitting his wounds, filling him with otherworldly strength. He rose to his feet, his eyes no longer merely red but glowing like twin suns. The Duke staggered back, true fear crossing his face for the first time. "What have you done?" Valerian's voice, when he spoke, carried the resonance of something ancient and terrible. What my sister could not. What Isabel began. What Eleonora will finish. The light surrounding Eleonora expanded outward, consuming the entire courtyard. Vampires caught in its path screamed as their immortal flesh blistered and burned. Lysandra alone seemed immune, her amber eyes wide with awe as she watched the transformation unfolding. "Stop this!" the Duke commanded, his voice cracking with panic. "You don't understand what forces you're unleashing." But Eleonora did understand, the knowledge flowing through her bloodline, through the bond, through the ancient stones beneath her feet. This place had been built to channel power, to maintain balance between worlds. Her mother had known, had died to protect this secret from the Duke's corrupting influence. The light coalesced around her and Valerian, binding them together in visible manifestation of their bond. She could feel his mind fully now, centuries of memories, of pain, of searching, of finding her, protecting her from afar, waiting for the moment when she would come into her power. It was always meant to be us, she realized aloud. Catalyst and channel. Human and immortal. Balance. The Duke, seeing his plans crumbling, made one final desperate lunge toward her. "If I can't have your power, no one will." As his taloned hand stretched toward her throat, Eleonora felt something shift within the bond. Valerian's consciousness merged more fully with hers, their combined power focusing into a single purpose. Without touching, they moved in perfect synchronization, turning toward the Duke. Blood to blood, they spoke in unison. Spirit to spirit, they continued, their voices melding into one. The light between them concentrated into a spear of pure energy that struck the Duke squarely in the chest. He froze mid-lunge, his body contorting as the power invaded him. For a moment, his face registered shock, then understanding, then terrible fear. "No," he whispered. "Not like this. Not after everything I've sacrificed." Cracks appeared in his skin, light pouring from within as if he contained a sun. His eyes found Eleonora's, hatred and desperation warring in their depths. "This isn't over," he hissed, his voice distorting as his body began to fracture. "What flows through your veins will always be hunted. What you've awakened cannot be controlled." The cracks spread across his face, his hands, his entire form. The ceremonial dagger, somehow reclaimed in the chaos, appeared in his hand one final time. With his last strength, he hurled it not at Eleonora or Valerian, but at the altar itself. "If I fall," he snarled, "the temple falls with me." The dagger struck the altar's fissure just as the Duke's body exploded in a blinding flash of light. The blast sent everyone in the courtyard flying backward. Eleonora felt herself torn from the altar, from Valerian, the bond between them stretching but holding. When her vision cleared, the Duke was gone, nothing but a scorch mark on the stones where he had stood. The altar had been split completely in two, and from the gap between the halves, something was emerging, something ancient and powerful and terribly hungry. Valerian's voice reached her through their bond, filled with horror and recognition. The Devourer. The thing he sought to become. He's released it. From the altar's depths, darkness poured like liquid night, coalescing into a form both humanoid and utterly alien. Eyes opened within the darkness, dozens of them, glowing with malevolent intelligence. "At last," spoke a voice that was not a voice, felt rather than heard, reverberating through bone and blood. "Freedom!" The creature's gaze fixed upon Eleonora, seeing through flesh to the catalyst power in her veins. "You have summoned me, little priestess. You shall be my first feast." As the darkness reached for her, Valerian appeared at her side, bloodied but unbowed, his hand finding hers. Through their bond flowed not just power now, but understanding and terrible realization. The Duke hadn't been trying to become a god. He had been trying to become this, the entity that had granted the old gods their power, the devourer that had been imprisoned beneath the temple eons ago by the combined might of catalyst blood and immortal guardians. "Can we stop it?" Eleonora whispered, feeling small and human before this ancient horror. Valerian's hand tightened around hers. "Not stop it," he replied, his voice grim with certainty. "Contain it. Bind it. As it was bound before." "How?" His eyes met hers, and through the bond she felt his resolve and his sorrow. "With sacrifice," he said simply. "Blood freely given. A life willingly offered." The darkness surged toward them as understanding dawned in Eleonora's heart. Someone would have to die to seal the breach, to maintain the balance, to save not just themselves, but everything beyond these ancient walls. The question was, which one of them would it be? The darkness coiled around them like living smoke, tendrils reaching with hungry purpose toward Eleonora's heart. The ruins trembled beneath their feet, ancient stones grinding against each other as the Devourer's presence weakened the veil between worlds. Storm clouds churned directly above them, no longer natural, but responding to the eldritch power spilling into the world. "A sacrifice," Eleonora repeated, the word bitter on her tongue. Through their bond, she felt Valerian's intention forming, his centuries of existence weighed against her barely begun life, his decision already made. "No," she said firmly, tightening her grip on his hand. "I won't allow it." Valerian's eyes softened as he looked at her. 500 years is long enough, Eleonora. I've lived waiting for this moment, to finally set right what went wrong with my sister, with your mother, with all the women Thornwick sacrificed for his ambition. The devourer paused in its approach, countless eyes blinking with curiosity as it observed their exchange. Two vessels, it mused, the voice reverberating through their bones. Two souls bound as one. How convenient. Lysandra appeared at their side, her silver hair whipping in the supernatural wind, her amber eyes reflecting the darkness before them. "There is another way," she said urgently. "The original binding required 3 elements: catalyst blood, immortal essence, and the temple itself. The temple is destroyed," Valerian argued, gesturing to the shattered altar and crumbling walls. "Not destroyed," Lysandra corrected. "Transformed. The Christians who built over this site didn't erase its power, they redirected it." She pointed to the Gothic arches still standing among the ruins. "The pattern remains. The power flows differently, but it's still here." Hope flickered through the bond, but Valerian's doubt remained palpable. Even if that's true, the original binding required death, a willing sacrifice. "Not death," came a new voice, soft, yet carrying clearly despite the tempest around them. "Surrender." They turned to find a shimmering figure standing where the altar had been, a woman with dark hair and familiar eyes, her form translucent yet unmistakable. "Mother?" Eleonora whispered, her heart constricting. The spectre of Isabel Nightshade smiled sadly. "The veil is thin tonight, daughter, thin enough for me to reach you one last time." The devourer hissed, its darkness recoiling slightly from Isabel's ghostly light. "The priestess who escaped. You cannot interfere here, Shadow." "I don't intend to interfere," Isabel replied calmly, "only to illuminate." Her gaze returned to Eleonora and Valerian. The original binding was not created through death, but through surrender, the willing submission of power to purpose. 3 catalysts, 3 immortals, surrendering their combined essence to forge chains that even a god could not break. Through the bond, memories flashed. Not Valerian's this time, but impressions carried in Eleonora's blood. Ancestral knowledge awakened by the night's events. She saw 6 figures arranged around the altar, 3 human women with catalyst blood, 3 immortal guardians who had once been human themselves. She felt their purpose, their power joining not in death but in transcendent unity. "The Duke corrupted the truth," Isabel continued, "twisted it to serve his hunger for dominion. He believed sacrifice meant destruction when it truly meant transformation." Valerian's understanding dawned alongside Eleonora's. 3 elements," he murmured. "We have catalyst blood and immortal essence, but we're still missing—" "Me," Lysandra interrupted, stepping forward. "I am the 3rd point of your triangle. I always have been." Confusion rippled through the bond, from Eleonora to Valerian and back. "I don't understand," Eleonora said. Lysandra's amber eyes held ancient sorrow. "Why do you think I've helped Valerian all these centuries? Why I've hunted Thornwick alongside him? The Duke didn't just take Valerian's sister, he took my daughter." Shock emanated from Valerian, strong enough to make Eleonora gasp. "Your daughter?" he repeated. "Marianne was your—" "Yes," Lysandra confirmed. "I was human once, centuries ago. Marianne was my child by a man I believed loved me. When she was taken to be Thornwick's bride, I sought help from every corner of the supernatural world. Too late to save her, but not too late to change myself, to hunt her killer for as long as it took." The pieces fell into place in Eleonora's mind. "That's why you knew about this place, why you came tonight." "I've waited 5 centuries for the chance to make this right," Lysandra said, "for the bloodlines to align once more, for Catalyst and Vessel and Temple to come together under a Samhain moon." The Devourer's patience ended. "Enough prattle!" it roared, darkness surging forward with renewed hunger. "I will consume you all!" Isabel's ghost flared brighter. "Now, daughter!" The triangle! Complete the binding before it's too late. Understanding flowed through the bond like quicksilver. Eleonora pulled Valerian toward the shattered altar, her free hand extended toward Lysandra. Triangle of power, she called over the howling wind. Bound by blood, by love, by purpose. Lysandra grasped her hand, completing the circuit. They stood where the altar had been, 3 points of a perfect triangle, with the devourer trapped in their center. Power surged through Eleonora, from the bond with Valerian, from her catalyst blood, from the ancient stones beneath her feet. She felt Valerian and Lysandra channeling their immortal essence into the connection, felt the ruins around them responding as the original pattern of the temple reasserted itself through their combined will. Blood to blood, Eleonora began, the words rising from her ancestral memory. Spirit to spirit, Valerian continued, his voice intertwining with hers. Power to purpose, Lysandra completed the triad, her amber eyes blazing with 5 centuries of pent-up vengeance. The devourer thrashed within their triangle, darkness lashing against invisible barriers. You cannot contain me! I am older than your stones, your blood, your pitiful lives. We don't seek to contain you, Eleonora replied, understanding flowing through her. We seek to transform you. The power building between them reached crescendo, light spiraling upward from their joined hands to meet the lightning still striking from the vortex above. Where darkness and light met, reality itself seemed to bend, creating a gateway that pulled at the devourer's substance. No! It shrieked, countless eyes widening in genuine fear. Not again! Not the void! Not the void, Valerian corrected, his voice resonating with otherworldly power. The balance, the place between worlds where power is neither created nor destroyed, but held in perfect equilibrium. The gateway expanded, its pull strengthening. The devourer fought against it, tendrils of darkness anchoring to the ruined stones around them. Through their bond, Eleonora felt Valerian's realization. They needed more. The 3 of them weren't enough to complete the binding. As if hearing his thought, Isabel's ghost moved to stand behind Eleonora, her translucent hands resting on her daughter's shoulders. My blood flows in you, she murmured. My power is yours to command. Another spectral figure materialized behind Valerian, a young woman with his same crimson eyes, her form wavering but determined. Brother, she said softly. At last. Marianne, he whispered, voice breaking with emotion that flooded their bond. A third ghost appeared behind Lysandra, a man in antiquated clothing, his expression solemn but proud. My love, he said simply. Our daughter is avenged. 6 points now, not 3. 2 triangles interlocked, the living and the dead, the present and the past, forming a perfect hexagram of power, with the devourer caught at its center. What was sundered shall be whole, they spoke in unison, voices of the living and dead blending into one transcendent sound. What was broken shall be mended. What was corrupted shall be cleansed. The gateway pulsed, expanding to encompass the entire courtyard. The devourer's darkness began to separate. Strands of its essence pulled into the swirling vortex. It screamed in 6 different voices, rage, fear, hunger, and something unexpectedly like relief. Not destruction, Eleonora reminded it as its form unraveled. Transformation. The darkness that had formed the devourer twisted into a new shape, no longer a creature of hunger and malice, but a spiraling column of balanced energy, light and dark intertwined. It rose through the gateway into the storm above, spreading outward to form a protective dome over the ruined temple. The binding is complete, it acknowledged, its voice now harmonious rather than horrifying. I am guardian once more, not devourer. The balance is restored. With a final flash that temporarily blinded all present, the gateway closed. The storm dissipated as suddenly as it had formed, clouds parting to reveal a night sky ablaze with stars and a full moon bathing the ruins in silver light. The ghosts of Isabel, Marianne, and Lysandra's long-lost love began to fade, their purpose fulfilled. Before disappearing completely, Isabel's spirit moved to stand before her daughter once more. "I am so proud of you," she said, her voice growing fainter. "You have completed what I could only begin." "Don't go," Eleonora pleaded, reaching for her mother's translucent form. "There's so much I need to ask you." Isabel smiled sadly. "The knowledge is in your blood, your bones, your heart. Trust yourself, daughter. Trust the bond you've forged." Her gaze shifted to include Valerian. "Take care of each other. What you've created tonight is rare and precious. I will protect her with my life," Valerian promised, his hand tightening around Eleonora's. "Not just protect," Isabel corrected gently. "Love. Live. Find joy in the balance you've restored." With these final words, she faded completely, along with the other spirits. Lysandra stood alone at the third point of their triangle, her amber eyes reflecting moonlight as she looked at Valerian and Eleonora with newfound respect. "So," she said after a moment, breaking the solemn silence, "it seems we've averted the end of the world. Again." A surprised laugh escaped Eleonora's lips, tension releasing in a flood of nearly hysterical relief. Valerian's amusement echoed through their bond, his arm sliding around her waist to steady her as reaction set in. "What happens now?" Eleonora asked, looking between the two immortals. "With the Duke gone, with the temple restored?" "Life happens," Lysandra replied with unexpected gentleness. "For the first time in 5 centuries, I have no vengeance driving me forward." She glanced around at the moonlit ruins. "Perhaps I'll stay here a while. The temple will need a guardian while it rebuilds its strength." "Rebuilds," Eleonora repeated, following her gaze. As they watched, the broken stones of the abbey began to shift, settling back into place as if guided by invisible hands. The altar, split by the Duke's final act of defiance, slowly mended itself, the cracked ceiling until only the faintest line remained to mark where it had been broken. "The balance has been restored," Valerian explained, his knowledge flowing to Eleonora through their bond. "The temple was always meant to be a place of power and protection. With the Devourer transformed back into Guardian, the physical structure will reflect its true purpose once more." Lysandra nodded. "Someone should remain to ensure it stays that way, to guide those who might be drawn to its power in the future." A small smile touched her lips. "After 5 centuries of destruction, I find myself rather drawn to the idea of creation and protection." Through their bond, Eleonora felt Valerian's understanding and his gratitude. "Thank you," he said simply, "for everything, for Marianne." "She was my daughter too," Lysandra replied softly, "and now perhaps she can truly rest." She straightened, some of her familiar imperious manner returning. "You two should go. Dawn approaches, and there are still the Duke's remaining followers to consider. They'll have felt their master's demise. They'll scatter," Valerian predicted. "Without Thornwick's power binding them, they'll return to their territories, lick their wounds." "Perhaps," Lysandra conceded, "but I wouldn't count on it. Power vacuums tend to create opportunists." Eleonora's exhaustion suddenly caught up with her, legs trembling with fatigue. Valerian felt it through their bond, sweeping her into his arms before she could protest. "We need to find safety before sunrise," he said, concern evident in his voice and through their connection. "You need rest. The power you've channeled tonight would have killed most humans." "I'm not most humans, apparently," Eleonora replied wearily, allowing her head to rest against his shoulder. Lysandra watched them with knowing eyes. "Take her to the sanctuary beneath Blackwood Manor," she suggested. "It's closer than your underground palace, and no one would think to look for you at your own abandoned property." Valerian nodded. "A wise suggestion." He hesitated, then added, "Will we see you again?" "Count on it," Lysandra replied with a small smile. "The triangle may be dormant for now, but it still exists. We 3 are bound by what happened here tonight." Her gaze lingered on Eleonora. Besides, someone will need to help your catalyst understand her abilities. They've only just awakened. With a final nod of farewell, Valerian tightened his hold on Eleonora and launched them skyward. As they soared away from the temple ruins, Eleonora caught a final glimpse of Lysandra, standing amid the reconstructing stones, her silver hair gleaming in the moonlight, amber eyes watching their departure like a vigilant guardian. The flight to Blackwood Manor passed in comfortable silence, Eleonora drifting between exhaustion and wonder as she processed all that had occurred. Through their bond, Valerian's thoughts reached her, concern for her well-being, amazement at what they'd accomplished together, and beneath it all, a warm current of emotion he wasn't ready to name but couldn't hide from her. Blackwood Manor appeared below them, a once grand estate now fallen into disrepair. Valerian descended toward what appeared to be an overgrown garden, landing beside a weathered stone statue of a weeping angel. "Your sanctuary is here?" Eleonora asked drowsily. "Beneath," he confirmed, pressing his hand to the angel's base. Stone grated against stone as a hidden entrance opened in the garden floor, revealing stairs descending into darkness. "I purchased this property a century ago when its noble line died out. Few know of its connection to me." The sanctuary below proved to be a stark contrast to the decaying mansion above. Clean, well-appointed chambers lined with books and artifacts from various eras. Valerian carried her to a bedroom with a large four-poster bed, gently setting her down on sheets softer than any she'd known at her father's estate. "Rest," he said softly, brushing hair from her forehead. "You're safe now." As he turned to leave, Eleonora caught his hand. "Stay," she whispered. "Please. I don't want to be alone with all of this." She gestured vaguely, encompassing the night's revelations, the bond between them, the power still humming in her veins. Valerian hesitated, conflict evident in his expression and through their connection. "Eleonora, what you're feeling right now, the bond, the shared trauma, it can create confusion, emotions that may not be entirely your own. Do you think me so weak-minded that I can't distinguish between magical influence and my own feelings?" she challenged, finding strength despite her exhaustion. A smile touched his lips. "No, I think you remarkably strong-minded, actually. Then respect that strength and stay." She shifted on the bed, making room beside her. "Just to talk. I have 1,000 questions, and the bond between us is overwhelming when you're not near." This much was true. She could feel his presence in her mind more acutely when they were physically separated, as if the bond stretched uncomfortably between them. With visible reluctance that didn't quite mask his desire to remain, Valerian sat on the edge of the bed. "What would you like to know?" "Everything," she replied simply. "What I am, what we are to each other now, what happens when the sun rises." "That last one is easiest to answer," he said with a small smile. "I sleep during daylight hours, though not in a coffin as legends suggest. This sanctuary is protected from the sun's rays, so I can move about freely within it. And I'm to stay here with you, a prisoner once more?" "Never a prisoner," he said firmly, genuine horror at the suggestion flowing through their bond. "You're free to come and go as you please, though I'd advise caution until we're certain the Duke's followers have truly dispersed. But this sanctuary, like all my properties, is yours to consider home for as long as you wish." Eleonora studied him in the gentle lamplight, seeing beyond his immortal beauty to the man beneath. A being who had lived 5 centuries driven by guilt and purpose, who now sat beside her unmoored from his primary motivation. "And what am I?" she asked softly. "A catalyst, yes, but what does that truly mean? It means your blood contains power. Power that can enhance supernatural abilities, break mystical barriers, forge connections between worlds. In the wrong hands, that power can corrupt and destroy. In the right hand," he paused, his gaze softening, "in your hands, it can heal, transform, restore balance. Like it did tonight. Yes, though that was just the beginning. Your abilities will grow as you learn to control them. Eleonora absorbed this, feeling the truth of it resonating in her blood. One final question remained, the one she both feared and needed to ask. And what are we to each other now, Valerian? This bond between us, is it merely magical, a tool we use to stop the devourer? Or is it something more? Through their connection, she felt his careful consideration, his unwillingness to influence her with his own feelings he'd kept carefully guarded for centuries. The bond itself is magical, he finally answered. A connection forged between catalyst blood and immortal essence. In time, you could choose to break it, though not without considerable effort. That doesn't answer my question, she pressed gently. Valerian's red eyes met hers, vulnerability showing through his careful control. What exists between us, beyond the magical bond, is up to you, Eleonora. I have lived too long and seen too much to presume upon your feelings or your future. You have only just gained your freedom. I would not tether you to me through obligation or magical influence. And if I choose to be tethered? She asked, heart quickening. Not through obligation, but through choice. Hope and fear warred within him, emotions so strong they spilled through their bond like wine from an overfilled cup. Then I would be honored beyond words, he whispered. But such decisions shouldn't be made in the aftermath of what we've endured tonight. Rest, heal. Consider what you truly want when the world isn't ending around us. Eleonora smiled, reaching up to touch his face. Very wise and very kind. Through their bond, she let him feel her sincerity, her gratitude, and the tender affection already taking root, despite, or perhaps because of, all they had experienced together. Rest now, he murmured, catching her hand and pressing a gentle kiss to her palm. Dawn approaches. We have time for all these questions and more. As exhaustion finally claimed her, Eleonora felt Valerian's presence in her mind like a comforting embrace. The Duke was gone, the devourer transformed, the ancient temple restored to its true purpose. Her blood still held power coveted by dark forces, but she was no longer ignorant of her heritage or her potential, and she was no longer alone. In the space between waking and dreaming, Eleonora felt her mother's presence once more, not a ghost this time, but a memory carried in her blood. Balance, whispered Isabel's voice. In all things, seek balance. Between human and immortal. Between power and restraint, between catalyst and vessel, between Eleonora and Valerian, a new kind of balance had been struck, one founded on choice rather than coercion, on mutual strength rather than dominance. What would grow from that foundation remained to be seen, but as sleep claimed her completely, Eleonora knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever path she chose now, she would walk it freely, her decisions her own. And for a girl who had been sold twice in a single day, that freedom was the greatest power of all.